my name is Justina Kanza, so I'm the founder and executive director at Okwera Academy. But I have also taken on roles as program manager, which is my current role at Warville, which is a fintech company, but also program coordinator at the Black Founders Network. A year For over a year, I think for about 14 months up until March. And then before that, I was a project manager, most of project management intern at Geotab, which is another tech company, telematics company in Oakville. And before that, also took on project management consultancy at the University of Toronto, and I was also a program assistant there. So that is uh, me in a nutshell, and that's to give a little bit of context as to why I am not so much qualified to share more about program management because I haven't been doing it for so long, but at the very least qualified to share about my journey and my career path, which has been in so many ways unconventional, and to share my blueprint of how I got into this role and also how I've been able to quote unquote climb from assistant, from intern to coordinator to manager, and then take on more of those leadership roles. So to start, I'm going to go through my path, what I describe as my career path, but also my life path from moving from Zambia to Canada about 7 years ago to studying at U of T and then transitioning into program management and other leadership roles and entrepreneurship as well. Um, so this is like a little picture of me. I think this was probably a week, if I'm not mistaken, before I left Zambia. I had my like Ankara Prince shirts that my cousin had made for me, and I was so excited to come to Canada and start a new life. But I moved in 2017 after completing high school a couple of years earlier than that, and really looking for different opportunities to pursue pursue a career and pursue a life beyond what I had been seeing and beyond what I had been accustomed to. So, like many of us immigrants would relate, we come from very humble beginnings, we come from very humble backgrounds. I tell my story of how um, graduating from high school, I didn't even know if one, my parents could afford to take me to university in Zambia because I wanted to go to law school at the time, let alone afford to pay for tuition fees abroad. And we know how ridiculous international fees are. And so I remember graduating from high school, I think in about 2015, and coming home and being so sure that I was going to be a lawyer and going to law school because I enjoyed arguing and I enjoyed debate. It was never in my mind to study abroad for a few reasons. One, I'd never seen anyone I knew studying abroad, so it was not a realm of reality, so to say, where, and I just didn't think that I could afford to go abroad. And so one of the things that I advocate for, even in the work that we do at Okwera, is representation, right? Like if you can see it, you can be it. And so in my situation, what ended up happening is I left high school, I went back home, and then I found that two cousins of mine had gotten scholarships, Mastercard Foundation scholarships to the I think Arizona State University, which for the first time it was a reality because they were quote unquote regular people. They were just like me. They had results just like mine. They had an upbringing just like mine. And so if it could happen for them, why couldn't it happen for me? And so representation of seeing people be in positions that we want to be with, especially people who have a similar positionality as us, is very important. And that's why, sessions like this, which is part of our Explore program, is very important because if you can see a program manager who looks like you, if you can see a CEO who looks like you, it's more likely for it to be shaped and framed in your head that that's a possibility. So I had a renewed dream to study abroad. I had a renewed dream to study abroad and get a scholarship. So I remember telling my stepmom at the time that I was going to study abroad. Like, I have this dream, I'm going to study abroad. And she said, like, she pretty much laughed at me because she was like, well, look at how many children we have here, because there's like 8 of us at least. We can't afford to take them to school here in Zambia. How do you think we're going to afford to take you to school abroad? Like, do you think you're special? And I remember having this faith of, well, I'm going to get a scholarship. I'm going to get a scholarship because I've set that this is the goal for me. and I'm going to find ways to do it. And so I would go to a neighborhood in Zambia. It's called Long Acres. So I'd go to that neighborhood and pretty much knock on their doors because they had embassies. They had embassies and consulates. So I would knock on their doors and give them my grade 12 results and say, hey, like if you have a scholarship available, like let me know. And I did that almost every day, and you'd have to like give them, because you know how it works back home. You have to give them some, a 10 kwacha, like a $10 as a token of thanks, so they're incentivized to reach out to you. And so I did get a few callbacks. One of them was at the Japanese embassy, where I was invited for an interview in Japanese, but I didn't speak Japanese at the time. So I learned Japanese because I was determined to study abroad. So I learned Japanese. I went for that interview. I didn't get the scholarship, but I also knew about the MasterCard Foundation. I didn't know about the MasterCard Foundation at U of T. But in my walking around embassies, I went to the American embassy. I ran into Michael, who's now like a brother to me. I ran into Michael, and he saw me holding MasterCard Foundation scholarship applications to other universities. I think Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana and Makerere in Uganda. So I had those applications, and so he saw MasterCard Foundation. He was like, "Oh, you're applying for MasterCard Foundation?" I said yes, and he says, "Well, I am an MCF scholar at U of T. I'm a MasterCard Foundation scholar at U of T." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like it was never in my head to study in Canada, because everyone thinks of the American dream, right? No one thinks of the Canadian dream. So he encouraged me to apply, helped me with my application, and then I did get the scholarship fully funded. They paid for pretty much anything and everything pertaining to my life in the 5 years that I was studying in Canada. And the other thing that Michael even helped me with was my visa. He paid for my visa. This man who I just met at an embassy paid for my visa. So a lesson that I'm trying to instill there, because it comes in very important in throughout your career path, is resourcefulness. Right, it's resourcefulness. So I'm not able to see the frame with everyone in it. So if there's any hands being raised or any questions as I'm speaking, please feel free to just unmute and jump in. So came to Canada 2017, and then I went to the University of Toronto, started my undergraduate, and it was very tough. Needless to say, it was a very tough experience for me. I don't tell this to a lot of people, but I pretty much failed through my first 2 years of university, so much so that I was once on academic probation. I was very close to being suspended, and if you're suspended for a year and you're under a scholarship, like you lose your scholarship, right? So it was a very tough experience for me, juggling the transition, being away from family, the isolation, and all the mental health stresses that come with migrating to Canada. I know this is a story that many of us can relate to. But another thing that was very challenging for me was finding a right fit in terms of what should I be studying, what career path will I be taking. And again, this is why this is important, because if I had someone doing workshops around what's a program manager, what should you be doing in undergraduate to prepare yourself for this role, I would have started the preparation a long time ago, right? So I moved from initially studying economics, because that's what I got the scholarship here for, to doing economics, not doing well in economics because I didn't love mathematics, and that was a very key part of economics, to international relations, and then I jumped to diaspora and transnational studies, and then I jumped to sociology, until I found myself in African studies because it was familiar. But also, there was just so much interest in me, because I always knew that the ultimate goal was to give back to the African continent and to communities and to people who had a journey like mine, and to give them the resources that they needed. And so jumping into African studies was such a blessing in disguise, because what ended up happening in that program is, because of how, what I find is more flexible with the program, they allow you, in certain courses at least, to decide what is it that you're interested in, because you're able to do independent researches and you're able to zone into your interests. So I was able to focus more on entrepreneurship there. I did a lot of research on entrepreneurship in Africa, youth entrepreneurship, women entrepreneurship, and things of that sort. And then, because when I had transitioned to African studies, I was still like failing, and now just now starting to pick up my grades. I remember the director of African Studies, who's now my mentor and is like a sister to me, the director at the University of Toronto. Like, she reached out to me. She's like, "Hey, I see you're failing. What are the ways that we can support you?" So me and her became close, even up to now. Like, we're so close that I go out for dinners with her, right? And again, one of the lessons I'm trying to instill here is sponsorship and mentorship, and how important it is in any career path. Um, so she took me on. She really sponsored and mentored me. She gave me job opportunities. So like my first job working in Canada, I was working at some restaurant on like Spadina and Harbour. It was called Croutons at the time. I was working as like a cashier and like a waitress, and then I started working at the front desk in Woodsworth Residence at the University of Toronto. But she gave me like my first real job, as a program assistant in the African Studies department. I was able to then start even taking on leadership roles within the department and within the university, because my confidence had been boosted. I was doing better in my grades. I was able to allocate some time to take on extracurriculars. So for those who are still in university, or college, or whatever that looks like, I think my piece of advice here is learning within the four walls of the classroom is great, but always look for ways to learn outside the classroom. And it doesn't have to be anything grandiose, right? Just having a heart of service, taking on students' leadership opportunities is very key. I did a lot of I was vice president for the African Studies Course Union, and then president the next year. So that really even shaped up what was my first role after graduation, which leads to my transition into program management. So in the last year of university, or towards the last year, because I did graduate in 2022. I was supposed to graduate in 2021, but because of the delays of how tough it had been for me, I had to graduate a year later. But towards the end of 2021, I think there was the boom of like breaking into tech, right? There was this breaking into tech era. And I was then also thinking, like, I'm graduating soon. How do I set myself up for success? Like, what am I going to do with my African studies specialization of my African studies degree? Am I going to work in government? Am I going to work in international relations? So just all this career planning started to get to me. But I was also very enticed at the prospect of breaking into tech, because I knew tech is booming. I knew tech created so much flexibility, especially during the pandemic, with people being able to work remotely. But I thought I didn't have the skills to work in tech. So I joined BPTN, Black Professionals in Tech Network. So I joined Black Professionals in Tech Network, and part of what happened in that organization, I was really being surrounded by other black professionals in tech, project managers, program managers, and then also seeing the different opportunities and resources that were available and soaking that in. So I identified project management as my easiest transition into tech, just because I'm not tech savvy. I couldn't even figure out how to record this meeting. That's how not tech savvy I can be sometimes. Granted, there's been areas over the past 3 4 years that I've had to grow and learn in, but I just wasn't tech savvy enough to take on software engineering or any of these more tech heavy roles. So project management was easier for me. And so one of the things that I did, which is what I always uh, share as advice, is start with what you have and where you are. So I decided in, I think, maybe end of 2021, that I want to get into project management. Okay, so what does a project manager do? A project manager coordinates projects. A project manager starts an initiative or project from start to finish. A project manager makes sure they're coordinating people, make sure they're coordinating resources, and makes sure everything is delivered on time, on schedule, and within budget, right, and within scope. So I'm like, okay, so I it's very easy to think I don't have this because I didn't have a PMP, I didn't have any certification. My undergraduate technically wasn't in anything project management specified. So my my advice of starting where you are with what you have, I applied that here, and I'm like, okay, what have I done up to this date? So I started looking at my student leadership roles. I started looking at the program assistant roles I had done. I started looking at um, the roles I had taken on. I think there's an echo coming somewhere. um, yeah. So I started looking at the roles I had taken on in while I was in my undergraduate, right? So looking at all these different. Give me 1 second. Perfect. Yeah, looking at all these different resources and paths that I had taken, and deciding how am I going to frame that as project management? How am I going to frame that as project management? So going back to the drawing board and using, because the titles are just titles. Always look at what is the roles and like the scope of work. I like how the knock codes, like if you're doing immigration stuff with Canada, I love how they do their knock code stuff. Like they don't really care for the job title. It's always about what are the duties that you performed. And so you find that in my role as a student leader at U of T, the duties that I performed in putting together events, the duties that I performed in putting together student initiatives, that is project management, right? So I decided to start calling myself a project manager because I had done this stuff already, and then I had to back it by certifications and micro credentials because those give credibility, but they also, so they give credibility, they improve your employability as well, but also your earning potential because you've taken the time to then learn this. So I went to Google. I think Google has some certificates, Grow with Google. So this is a resource that I want for you guys to keep in mind because I know, Flecky, as an example, you asked um, what are some certifications that project managers need. So this is the one that I started with. I know there's so much more, and I'll share those shortly. So I took on that, and then I built a portfolio of my own projects and programs. So leveraging my expertise from university, but I'd also been in entrepreneurship for a while. So some of those projects that I was doing, even in my recruitment firm, I built that as a portfolio. Because sometimes what employers want to see is, have you done this before? Right? They want to see that you're teachable and willing to learn and learn new things and all of that, but they're also looking for, have you done this before? Because between someone who's done something before and is teachable and someone who's never done it and is teachable, like employers are always going to pick the person who's done it before because it's less training, so to say, for them, and it's also less resources spent. So that was my path. I got my certifications, thankfully, through BPT, and I was able to get my first project management role in 2022, summer of 2022, with Geotab. So I joined Geotab. I worked in project management for a while. I did the traditional project management as per the PMP, PM I think, the project management book of knowledge. I did the traditional project management, and I found that I didn't like it. I didn't like project management in a traditional sense just because for me it can be rigid, and I'll speak very soon about the difference between project management and program management and also product management. But what I found in all of that is, like, project managers are focusing on one specific project, and sometimes these projects drag on. Like, there's one project that I was doing with the city of Toronto during my time at Geotab, and that dragged on for like the entire 4 months I was with Geotab, and I spent more time on that project than anything else. And it's fun and everything, but for someone like me, who I know that I am more creative and free spirited and flexible, I wanted the opportunity to work on different things. I wanted the opportunity to work on different things. So I knew project management in its traditional sense wasn't going to work for me. So I started looking at pivoting. What's something else that I can do that's similar to project management but gives me this flexibility that I'm looking for? And so a lesson that I want to insert there is, fail fast, fail forward, right? The sooner you take on whatever it is and decide whether it works for you, the sooner you can know if it works for you or not, and the sooner you can like make that pivot. So I identified program coordination, program management as an alternative, because then what program management is you're managing multiple initiatives and projects at the same time within a portfolio. So thankfully I was able to find a role with the Black Founders Network by like end of 2022, and then I started on that role and have grown from a program coordinator at BFN to now program management, and community management, because that's a huge piece of my portfolio with Warvio, but also doing the same work, program direction, program leadership through Okwera Academy, and also the recruitment firm that I ran. So that's that on the transition piece. So on to the more detailed versions of like what is program management, what do program managers do, what skills do you need to succeed, what are some skills that I'm exerting and exercising on a daily, what are the responsibilities, and also what I would call a blueprint, right? So like I mentioned, a program manager oversees and coordinates multiple projects, various projects, products sometimes, and strategic initiatives across an organization. So I'll give an example of when I was at BFN. So my role at BFN was program coordination by title, but the responsibilities and duties that I executed, some of them would fall under program management, right? So strategic planning and alignment. So ensuring that all moving pieces horizontally align with the organization. So I would run, we had a Black Career Advancement program that I had to initiate and implement, but make sure that it's aligning with the overall vision of the organization. What's the vision of the organization, BFN as an example, to connect folks to resources, community, and capital. And so we're doing that through the Black Career Advancement program. I would have to then, while doing the Black Career Advancement program, still do Smart Start Awards, right? Giving grants and funding to early stage founders, and then do Accelerate, and then do anything else that came up. So you're noticing that I'm handling multiple initiatives at the same time. Sometimes there were like 5 initiatives on my plate that I was handling, and now with Warview, the initiatives that are on my plate are even so much more, because I have to run we have a podcast going, and then I have to run some sales cycles. I have to support marketing, so different initiatives at once. Whereas a project manager, it would just be one thing, one focus, and sticking to that. And so program oversight is another one, right? So establishing structures and monitoring KPIs. So KPI is a key performance indicator. So how do you know that what you're doing is successful? That's a huge part of program management, measuring success and evaluation, and also defining roles of the team and stakeholders that will be engaged with you. Can folks still hear me? Just like a thumbs up. Perfect, perfect. Okay. Um, and the other one, as I mentioned, is team management, right? Because you're bringing together a team of people working very cross-functionally, cross-functional collaboration, and ensuring you're providing leadership to them, direction on, like, okay, because you are the person who is doing the strategic planning and alignment. You know how, what role each person is playing, how that plays into the overall vision of the organization. So you then have to provide them direction to make sure that there's that alignment, and also support, make sure they have all the resources that they need to do their jobs well. I always say a leader of any sort, whether you're a program manager, whether you're a CEO, your job is to enable your team, enable them with the right culture and environment so they can do their job productively and effectively, but also enable them with the right resources. So stakeholder management is another one. So when, if I was to go through the key responsibilities of a program manager in general, but also specifically to what my roles have looked like. So one that I mentioned is strategic planning. So program managers develop strategic plans and objectives for a program, aligning them with the overall organization's vision and mission. So you establish clear goals, milestones, and success criteria to guide the projects. And then a huge piece of it is project coordination. So always, I think of a program manager as a project manager on steroids. So project management is still a huge part of program management. It's just done on a grander scale, because you're handling multiple various projects. So one of the responsibilities is project coordination. So you coordinate the activity of the multiple projects within the program, ensuring that they're integrated and that they're aligned to deliver desired outcomes. So like I mentioned, you also have to allocate resources, monitor progress, and address issues as they come up to keep things on track. And then stakeholder management and engagement is another one, right? So engage with stakeholders at different levels. In my role at BFN, for example, some of the stakeholders that I would have to engage, because you're always managing down but also managing up, right? So as a program manager, as a program coordinator, I would then quote unquote manage the program assistant to give her direction and to make sure that everything was resources were allocated well and that projects that I was working on with her were kept on track. But some of the stakeholders that I would also have to manage when you think of managing app is our program manager, right? To ensure like, okay, these are the resources that we need from you to be able to deliver this program effectively and to meet our KPIs. But also the director, like John French. Um, I'll admit someone who just came in. Hi, Olusola. Thank you for joining us. So we're kind of already flowing. I'm sharing some of the key responsibilities of a program manager. So stakeholder management is a huge one. So you have to communicate program status, gather feedback, and manage the expectations to ensure there's alignment, and also ensure that if there's lack of resources, especially if you're talking of a project sponsor, so to say, like who's sponsoring this project, make sure that they're giving you the right resources that you need. Risk management is a huge piece. So you must identify and assess risks associated with program delivery, including scope changes, resource constraints, and external dependencies. And so, in the example of some of the programs that I'm managing at my current role at Wolvio. So we have a community financial wellness podcast that I manage. Some of the risks that I would have to foresee here is because we record the podcast once a month, and we need to have guests lined up for those recording. So if you're being in that risk management mindset, I have to then plan to say, okay, I have four guests that I have to uh, host and interview today. What if one of them doesn't show up? How do I mitigate for that? Do I either have an alternative day, or do I have backup guests that I can host, right? So kind of thinking, that's why it's very strategic. So having contingency plans to minimize disruptions and ensure the and the program success. And then quality assurance. So you have to monitor the quality of the project and the deliverables to ensure they meet standards and requirements, right? So you have to implement processes and performance metrics to ensure the program is effective and continuously improve. And so what this looks like in terms of the podcast as an example. So if we from the very beginning of this project have identified our KPI as we need about 5,000 listens, right? 5,000 plays, I guess, with this podcast. Then for quality assurance, one, I have to make sure that are these processes being met? Are we doing all we need in terms of distribution and in terms of quality of the product itself to incentivize people to listen, but also aligning those performance metrics to say, are we meeting this number? If not, what can we do to meet this number? And then there's other parts of the program management role that could be like financial or resource management in general. So depending on what your role looks like, so depending on the size of your organization, sometimes people are managing like millions of dollars worth of resources and allocating that to the different stakeholders within the project. So deciding what vendors you're going to be bringing on, right? So is there any question in the chat? Kenan. So oversee the budgets and the financial resources and the expenditures to ensure that you're spending responsibly, but also that there's accountability and that everything is within budget. Because those are the three main things that a project manager does: within budget, within scope, within timeline. Right. So you have to keep that in mind. And then I also talked about leadership and team management. So those are the responsibilities. I will go on to some of the skills that I find myself exerting in this role, and then go on to the comparison of project versus product versus program. But in the meantime, is there any questions? I just don't want to be talking at Fox. I'll open it up for some interactions. Any questions, anything that stands out?
I
So,
have a question.
yes, Flecky.
How did you deal with did you ever have to deal with acquiring sponsorships for like the event, like the event to like sorry like the programs you put together?
Yes, yes. So did a lot of that at Okwera Academy because we've gotten some funding, but also at BFN. So I think part of what I've shared a lot throughout is, one, you have to be resourceful, right? You have to be resourceful in finding what are the different opportunities to get the resources needed to deliver this program. But then, too, I think you have to be a storyteller as a program manager. You have to be a storyteller, especially when it comes to finding funding and sponsorship. So you have to, and that's why you have to have the strategic minds to say, okay, this is the long term goal, and this is the story of how we're going to build this program out, and how you, as a sponsor, can benefit from being part of this story and this program that we're building out. So you have to be a salesperson as well, I think. Yeah, you have to be a salesperson, but you also have to be a storyteller. But again, if you do your job right, at least if it's not a first time project, if it's not a pilot, if you do your job right in terms of ensuring quality of products, ensuring satisfaction of stakeholders, which in the case of BFN, right, ensuring that the BFN community is happy about maybe a power of community event that we did last year, ensuring there's like great feedback, ensuring there's a nice story to tell around it because we've interviewed participants of that event, then it's easier to get sponsors because you go to people and you show them the KPIs, you show them the success metrics to say, you know what, we did something like this last year. 500 people showed up, even though it was very stormy. This is videos of people saying what they liked about the event, and then being able to align our story and our needs with the sponsor's objectives. And so if we go to Black North Initiative as an example to say we want you to be a sponsor for this event, which happened because we had a Power of Community event last year, very successful. And this year I went to Black North Initiative to ask for their sponsorship. And this is a story that I was telling. It's like, we've done this program before, it was a success. This is how we assure quality. This is the value it's going to bring for you. How do we make sure you come on board and make sure there's no friction in how they come on board? Because if you're selling, you're always looking out for friction points. So I hope that answers your questions. Like, it does it.
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you.
Amazing. Any other questions there?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Emmanuel.
In terms of building your portfolio, or what are the key things that you had to focus on? Making sure that you have all the right information or the right amount of activities or things that you have done in the past that are showcased on your portfolio, so that it's easier for you to convince people who are hiring you, or a way to justify the things you have done, or just showcase your experience in the best way.
Yes, that's a very good question. I think it's worth noting that my portfolio was just my resume. I know people go the extra step to have like a website and everything, and I think that's very valuable. I didn't have the expertise or the resources to do it at the time, so my portfolio was just my resume, but it was also my social media. One of the things that I'm a huge advocate for is to like post in real time anything that you work on, small or large. Post it in real time. Post, like, even using the star method, right? If you've done resumes before, what was the situation? I facilitated, oh, well, we hosted an Imani project as an example for you, Emmanuel. Okay, what was the task? I facilitated the project. What was the actions? I facilitated the project by, connecting this person with that person or making this presentation. What was the result? People left this event getting information around certain resources. The feedback that we got is that, this was such a great event. I was able to find a job through one of the resources that you shared. So being able to use that STAR method to tell a story and to post it on your social media, particularly LinkedIn, because that's more of a professional space, is one way to like build your portfolio in real time. Because trust me, like, people watch that, people look. I was able to find my job with BFN primarily because someone saw the work that I was doing in the startup space and was able to associate me with entrepreneurship. And so when they saw that opportunity, they were able to send it to me, but also advocate for me for the opportunity. So that's one way. And then in terms of portfolio, as in resume, I think sitting down with yourself and really like writing down, journaling, so to say, everything that you did in that role, everything that you did for any of the projects that you worked on, and documenting it in a way that again shows your role, shows the actions and the results that you took on. but aligning it to the roles that you're targeting. So if you're looking for a project coordination, project management role, right? What anyone who's hiring for a project manager is looking for mainly is someone who knows how to initiate something from nothing, implement and execute it within a certain timeline, within a certain budget, and also work with the team and collaborate with teams and assign roles and all the stakeholder engagement pieces, right? So then what you're doing when you're building your portfolio is just answering the question in the project management case, answer the question, when did I when did I build an initiative from scratch to finish, from initiation to close. So you answer that question and you write it down, right, as a point on your portfolio, on your resume. When did I make sure that this thing was done within budget? When did I work cross functionally and collaborate with other teams towards one goal? And just kind of organizing it that way. Does that make sense for you, Emmanuel?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Amazing. Any more questions before I go to some skills uh, and then the comparison and then the blueprint? I know we're quite short on time. Any questions from Tiffany, Rufin, Olusola? I know Olusola, you joined us a bit late, and Mukeni.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did you find, especially considering that you did not pursue project management at undergrad level,
Mm-hmm.
and did you find that you had more success reaching out to people directly or forming those connections in terms of job hiring or just applying to job applications that you found online?
Yes, I think the former. So part of the blueprint that I was going to share is networking. Networking really came in valuable for me because I think the first job, my first official gig in project management came in through BPTN, Black Professionals in Tech Network, because they had a partnership with Geotab to hire from within the community, right? So I would say for me, the luck came into joining these different organizations, networking, but also reaching out directly to recruiters or hiring managers, because the truth is, like, as much as you will work on your resume and it will be a very perfect resume almost, there is like 10 other people who have resumes that are on paper perfect. So how do you set yourself apart? Like, how do you give yourself an opportunity to tell your story and stand out? So I think networking is one, because you're meeting people who can advocate for you, which was my case in my BFN role, or reaching out directly to recruiters, which I did for Geotab. I reached out to Cindy, who I'm still friends with now, and she was able to like invite me for an interview ASAP and kind of take it from there. So I really, especially if you have like a non-traditional background that doesn't align with the role that you're going for, because your resume is just going to show what you already have in your background, right? If you don't have the role that you're going for in the background, you need to supplement it with something else and be able to tell the story, whether it's through reaching out to someone in that role, a hiring manager or recruiter, or what's the word, cover letters, like tell the story of like, hey, I know, like, on paper I technically do not have this traditional project management experience, but here are ways that I can transfer the experience that I have, which I find is very similar to this particular role, and still guarantee success of the projects and the organizations that I serve. Does that make sense, Tiffany?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. So Rufin, your mic was off for a second.
No, I was just gonna ask quickly,
Mm-hmm.
um, do you find it that it's more effective to build those connection and sort of have someone open the door for you, or to gain that experience through different projects, or a combination of both?
I think it's always a combination of both. One can do without the other, because even if someone opens the door for you and speaks for you, which they'll be hesitant to speak on your behalf because they're putting their reputation at risk, if they don't feel that you have the experience or at least the coachability to do that job correctly. And so if I'm going to put myself on the line to advocate and sponsor someone, I should believe in them to achieve and to meet the expectations of the role. And for me to believe in them, then they had to have done some work, whether it's some practical experience gained through like projects here and there. Just see them, yeah, see them seek opportunities to lead projects and project teams, so it's easier for me to advocate for them. But I say very strongly, especially in today's market, especially with the way things are today, that you need mentors and we need sponsors. Like my career, all the jobs that I have, honestly, like I've never ever gone on a huge job search journey for myself. Almost always I've applied to under 5 jobs, maybe 10, and I've always gotten a role that I want, through, maybe not even through those applications, through sponsorships and mentors and networking. My job, my first like program assistant role with the professor, the director of African Studies, came from me connecting with her. My project consultancy role again at the university, it came through a friend. BFN came through, actually applied for another role that Ifosa from BFN leads, another organization, African Impact. I didn't get that role, but I kept that network. And he told me there's another role that's going to open up at BFN in my other organization later. I kept that network and followed up with him every month. I'm like, Ifosa, how far with that role? From like April of 2022 to like October, November, until one time I was like, Justina, the role is finally ready. Here's the job description, apply, right? So that's how I got that role. My current role with Wovio also came through that. It came through me having a conversation with someone. I was like, oh, Wovio, and then they're like, Wovio has a role, and I reached out to what's his name. Jonah. I don't know why I said what's his name. That's our CEO. Jonah. I reached out to Jonah. I'm like, hey, I saw this role is available. I'm interested. Can we have a call? And he happened to be in town because the company is based in Calgary. He happened to be in town at the same time that I messaged him. He was like, yeah, let's have an interview tomorrow. And we had an interview the next day, right? So networking, I cannot emphasize enough. So many opportunities come through that. And people are watching is the other thing that I've learned from myself. And that's why I'm saying anytime you get like seek an opportunity to gain visibility and share the works that you're doing, because people don't know what you're doing until you share it. But also seek opportunities to serve, like opportunities to take on roles. I've had people who, like, I don't know, are just like, oh, Justina, like I've seen you working, like I've seen you at an event and you just seem busy, you seem helpful. I think this opportunity will be great for you, right? So that would be my advice there in terms of like what's a blueprint to getting into a role like this, but also any other role. So I feel like I've gone through the skills in one way or the other, and I can get back to it. But for the sake of time, I'll go through like what I think is a blueprint based on my own experience, and also like if I was to do things differently, and I knew I wanted to take on this role, this is what I would do. So education, starting with education, out, if you're going to take a bachelor's degree, which I think is valuable in today's time still, but yeah, like if I'm being very very honest, like if it was up to me, completely up to me, and I was already in Canada and like I didn't need a scholarship and like everything was just perfect, if I was where I am now and trying to start from scratch, and I knew I wanted to get into program management, a bachelor's wouldn't be on my list, because
Yeah.
I it's not relevant. I would have taken on a project management like path, whether it's a project management like certification or something like that, and start working on projects as soon as possible. Because a lot of what I do now, I do apply some of the knowledge I've learned in university, but I'm also having to relearn a lot. Like I have to take on a project management certification to even get into this path. So unless it's also very specific or technical, like if you want to get into like engineering project management, then maybe you want to go to engineering school, right? So depending on what you want, make sure you have that solid foundation. But if you do have a bachelor's degree and you also want to, because what these credentials do for you beyond giving you the experience is giving you the credibility that then you can leverage for your employability, yes, but also your earning potential. So someone with a bachelor's degree today or even a master's, like you can negotiate a better salary than someone who does not have that. So if I was to go for a master's degree and my objective was still to do project management, then maybe I would consider a project management degree, master's degree or certificate. Um, I'll go into business administration, which is something that's on my mind now. I'm thinking, do I do MBA? I recently applied for another scholarship for artificial intelligence in business because I see that as being part of my journey. So that's something I would look into. But most of certificates, micro credentials, so to say, PMP is very valuable. If you're getting into the traditional project management, PMP is very valuable. So look up the PMI, the Project Management Institute. That's where you get all these certifications. I know before PMP, if you're just very new to project management, there's the CAPM, right? The Certified Associate in Project Management. I think this one is easier to get, and that's the one that I was working towards when I first started, because you just need to have a few hours of like learning, which you can do through Google, and you pay like $35 per month. It can take anywhere from 3 months to 6 months, or even way less than that, depending on your speed. And then with that, you're able to apply for the CAPM. It's a very easy process. And then after doing project management for a while, CAPM, you do your PMP. And then if you want to get specifically into program management, I don't have like any program management certification because my roles have been unconventional and I don't find that I need them. But there's also a program management professional, a PGMP. So this is validated again by PMI to validate your expertise in program management, and it's designed for experienced program managers who oversee complex initiatives and strategic portfolios. And then there's also the different types of like there's project management, program management certifications, like the Agile, like Scrum Master. You might have heard of Scrum Master, or like the Agile Certified Project, Agile Certified Practitioner, the ACP. So is to supplement your skills in agile methodologies, because there's different methodologies to project management, right? So that's also more so niching down if you want to niche down from there. And then another part of the blueprint is, like I mentioned so many times, the practical experience part, right? So start by gaining practical experience in project management roles by title, yes, or also just by duty. So especially when you're doing student leadership, you're already doing a lot of this. If you're doing community work, you're already doing a lot of this. So start getting more of those experiences and building out your portfolio. And one thing that I found valuable once I identified for me that I was going to get into the project management space is to negotiate your job titles, because like you don't want to be perceived as lying when you say I'm a project manager and like your company doesn't even know that's your role, but you want to be able to like have that title in your LinkedIn bio, on your resume, without it being dishonest, because that's how then recruiters find you by that. So as an example, the program assistant role that I had at the university with the professor, that was like a research assistant role, and I asked for it to be a program assistant role because I'm trying to build my portfolio towards this. The project management consultancy that I did at the university, that was also research assistant, but I'm still going to be doing things that is like managing a project. So I asked to be called a project management professional. My current role, like it was proposed to me as a community manager, and that's nice and good. But if I'm trying to build myself as a specialized program manager, I want that to show on the record. So I asked for my job title to be changed, and most times than not, the companies don't even care about it, to be honest, especially if it's externally facing. I think they can call you whatever internally, they don't care so much about it. So that would be another tip. um, and then yeah, so take on leadership responsibilities, and also because with project management, you're showing your ability to manage a project. With program management, you're showing your ability to manage multiple projects and stakeholders at the same time. So if you're able to show that, that's even better, to show that you're doing five initiatives for one organization to meet their strategic goal. Then that's even better. Then I've talked about mentorship and networking opportunities. So network with experienced program managers within your organizations, within other organizations, within professional networks. Seek mentors, yes. So mentors and sponsors are equally important. I would advocate that sponsors are even more important than mentors. And my difference between these two is a mentor, and think of it like a Google map, right? So there's three ways that you can get from point A to point B. You can try and navigate it by yourself. You're going to this place for the first time. You can try and navigate it by yourself. Say you're going from Toronto to Hamilton. You can try and like navigate it by yourself. But if it's the first time that you're doing it, like there's going to be so many hurdles and so much friction. So your time to get there will be longer than it would have been if someone gave you like a map, right? If someone gave you a map. So that's what I think of as trying to do this without a mentor. And then trying to do it with a mentor is, yes, someone has given you a map, uh, but someone is also going with you because they've been there before. So they'll go with you from, like, I live in Hyde Park, and they'll tell you, you know what, don't take Hill Station, take Hyde Park Station instead, because Hyde Park Station the trains are quicker. And they'll tell you go to Union Station instead of Bloor Go Station, right? Because they've been there, so they'll walk with you. They know which door to take to find the buses, which bus to take, what stop to get off at, right? So they'll be able to to advise you along the way. That's a mentor. But a mentor will advise you to you getting that's locked in Hamilton, and your mentor like doesn't have access to that building, so they can't get you in, which means like all of this journey, everything that you've been doing to get from Toronto to Hamilton is rendered mute because you can't get into that building anyway. What a sponsor does for you is sponsors are in those buildings already, and so they open the door for you. They open the door for you to come in, or at the very least they know someone who's in that building and can say, you know what, I know Justina, she's my girl, open the door for her, let her in, they can vouch for you. So I think both are important. Sponsors can also be mentors, but not all mentors are sponsors, not all sponsors are mentors, but it's equally important to have both. Another thing that I'll mention is obviously continuous learning and professional development. Make sure you're updated on what's happening in the industry. What are some certifications that you need to get? Because certifications on the employee and job seeker side, they're only as valuable as if the employer recognizes it as a valuable certification. So you can go and take like a PMP and like all of this stuff, but if the industry has changed and they don't recognize PMPs anymore and you don't know that, then all the work that you're doing is again rendered mute. So you want to stay updated on what's being valued in the industry, and things like that. So attend training programs and workshops. And I think at the very least what this does is people see you as someone who's a lifelong learner, who's coachable and teachable, and every organization wants this, right? And you're also able to get enough knowledge to then pass down, like each one teach one. And that's where leadership comes in, especially if you're looking to go from like a program coordinator to a program manager to a program director and whatever comes after that. It's your ability to grow, which comes from continuous learning and development, and grow enough that you have valuable information to share to others. That's how you're considered a leader, because then you can give direction, you can offer support, you can offer insight and knowledge. So that's how you get to leadership positions. So that's it on my version of the blueprint. So I'll stop here for a second. I still very much, I know we're over time, but I still very much want to go through the, what you call this, comparison of project management versus program versus product management. So I'll stop for a few seconds for some questions on the blueprint, and then we'll go through the comparison and close it off there.
Yeah, sorry, Justine, I just have to jump off the call. I have another meeting.
No worries.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
the
so much,
presentation.
Rufin. Thanks for
Thank you.
joining.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Any questions on the blueprint? Yes, Tiffany.
I have a question about the mentors and sponsors. It's how do you identify who
Mm,
can fill those roles to the way that you want it to be filled? Because
yeah.
it's very easy to be just guided in a direction that you don't really want to go just because someone has been down that road.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you identify?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good question. That's one that I'm constantly like trying to refine even for myself. I think a mentor, yes, is someone who's been down a path that you would like to go, but is also, yeah, no worries, Mukeni. Thanks for joining us. And if any questions come up, you can message us as well. amazing. Yes, Tiffany. I think a mentor. Maybe I start with a sponsor. A sponsor must have some social capital. I think. Yeah, maybe is the word. Like they must have some authority. They must have some some authority that if they ask for a door to be opened, that people are willing to open that door. Or they must have some social capital as well, like they know enough people that they can get these people to open doors for you. So that one is almost always clear who these people are, and they don't have to be in a similar role as you. Like my one of my sponsors, as an example, Professor Mariam Lowe from the African Studies Department, she doesn't do a role similar to me. Like she's in academia, but she's a sponsor in that she's opened job opportunities for me because she has one, she recognizes my value, but also two, she has enough social capital and like authority that she can say in certain rooms that let's bring in Justina and people will listen to her. So identify who those people are. And sometimes even with sponsors, both sponsors and mentors, you want to give before you take. I know some like there's a whole other conversation around sponsorship and mentorship and networking and on how to do it effectively, and we can have that later, but that's my 2 cents on the sponsorship piece. And then on the mentorship piece, I think this one is the one that's still a little bit tricky for me because yes, you want to identify many people. I think you want to identify multiple people who've taken a similar path to you, because as much as I've shared about my program management path, I know it's not going to be a path that all of you would want to take, but also would be willing to take. So I think have multiple ones that you can like pick and choose to say, okay, from Justina, yeah, I like that she took on this part, and because you're creating your own journey at the end of the day. So I don't know if that answers it, but talk to many, have multiple information or interviews, and find people who are in taking the path. But also, as you talk to many people, you can then identify which one has like the most similar positionality to you. Sorry, I just realized I. Give me 1 second. I have another meeting as well. Um, okay, give me 1 second. Sorry, Tiffany, does that answer your question?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, and then I'll go through quickly, and I might share this in the post workshop resources, but I'll quickly go through the difference. I think I've really dwelled on the difference between a project and a program manager. So just to like highlight it, a program manager is focusing on managing individual projects from initiation to completion and ensuring they're done within scope, within budget, and within time. And so they're coordinating multiple tasks related to a project and activities to achieve this project objectives and deliverables. So think of a project manager as someone who's answering the questions who, what, how, and when, right? Who, what, how, and when. So we're answering the questions of how will this how will this project be delivered, how will this deliverable be delivered, by when must it be done, what resources and skills are necessary to complete it by the deadlines, and how can the project be broken down into simpler steps, right? So that's what the project manager is doing. Then the program manager is managing multiple projects and initiatives within a broader program. So you can have like a Black Founders Network program, and there's about 5 initiatives under that, and you're managing them at the same time, same portfolio. So a program manager is thinking about who, similar to the project manager, who, what, how, when, but they're also thinking about the why, right? Because they're the strategic planner, and they're aligning these individual projects and initiatives to the broader organization objectives. So they're also asking, why should we take on this project? In addition to how is it going to be done, what is it going to be done, and when is it going to be done? And sometimes program managers manage project managers. So once they decide that once they answer the why part of why an initiative or project should be done, maybe then they can pass it down to a project manager who can then start taking on like how they're going to do it. And then the project manager, which is yeah, it's a role of its own, obviously. So they're focused on, yes, strategy and vision, but they're also focused on delivering specific product or product line throughout the life cycle. So think of an app, right? A product manager is behind delivering, how do we deliver this product, and how do I work with engineering and then design and then marketing to make sure that the product is being delivered to customer to meet both customer and business needs. They're also asking why should we be creating this app in the first place? If we create this app, so what, right? What does this do for the company? What does this do for our customers? So yeah, that is high level the difference here. You can do a little bit more research on it, but I can also share some resources and articles after. But in the interest of time, and also because I need to jump on another meeting, I'll stop here and see if there's any other questions. We can wrap it up within the next 4 minutes. Any questions?
Yeah, I just want to clarify something.
Yes, Sola.
I just want to ask, is a project manager synonymous to like an event coordinator?
No, I wouldn't say they're synonymous. I think an event coordinator is a project manager that just manages events as a project. So I would say all event coordinators, event managers, in my perspective, are project managers, but not all project managers are event coordinators.
Right, that's it.
Yes, because I can be a project manager that's managing a tech project, right? Where I can be an event coordinator who's managing an event as a project. So that's how I would put that. Does that answer your question, Olusola?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys, and that to say also as well, like if you have event coordination experience and you're trying to get into project management, that's one of the things that you can use on your portfolio to show that you're a project management. You can even call yourself a project manager if you like, because you are a project manager. All right, guys, I'm going to jump into my next meeting, but thank you so much for joining me. I'll share some resources by next week and recordings. And Fleck, if you can also share your recording, I'll really appreciate. I hope this has been valuable.